Hello and welcome to this edition of Weekly Word. Father Ed here.
Father Kyle.
And we are, as you can see, I am back. And now Father Dominic is taking a little vacation. So we are here, Father Rosser and I, for our consideration of the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And we have, I guess all these gospel texts are famous to you good Catholics. But this one is the presentation, St. Luke's version of the presentation of the Lord's Prayer, or the Our Father, as we call it in our Catholic tradition. And so we have an Old Testament reading from the book of Genesis, in which Abraham is famously asking or pleading with God, kind of bargaining with God, if God would spare the city of Sodom if there were maybe 50 faithful people there, or maybe 40 or 30 or 20, or finally it gets down to 10. And so God says, well, I will spare the city if there were 10 faithful people there. Well, we all know what happened to Sodom, so I guess he didn't find even 10 faithful people there. So, but this was, Kyle, what did you say that was an instruction in?
Oh, well, it definitely shows kind of in the Old Testament, and also Christ's kind of explanation of the Our Father in Luke's Gospel is all about perseverance in prayer, right? After Christ gives his disciples the Lord's Prayer, after they've asked, John has taught his disciples how to pray, why don't you teach us? So he gives them this prayer, but he goes on to say kind of other famous phrases that we hear from Christ. Seek and ye shall find, knock and the door will be opened for you. It's all about perseverance in prayer and actually asking the Lord for these things. Because I think so often we kind of go about our lives just kind of thinking or hoping that the Lord is going to do things for us, or all of a sudden change our lives in some way. But we don't actually spend the time in prayer. We don't actually kind of approach the Lord and say, Lord, here's where my heart is. Where do you want me to be?
Right. Yeah, so this quality of perseverance, I would say anybody who has ever taken the call to prayer seriously realizes that perseverance is a fundamental attribute or virtue that we have got to employ, because if we employ any other method of assessing, like what's the value of praying, as Father was explaining, we might very quickly say, well, God isn't hearing my prayer. What I was hoping for didn't happen. God doesn't care about me. God is absent. Maybe there is no God. So we have to be encouraged to pray for something other than getting the results in life that we want. So, and what might that be? Well, we would say in the gospel text, it is because we belong to Jesus. And Jesus belongs to God, as the scriptures tell us in other places. So if we looking for a motivation as to why should I persevere in prayer, it's because the God has created us for this, and Jesus has called us for this. And quite frankly, Jesus has given us of his Spirit that we might persevere in prayer, because it's only, St. Paul tells us, by the power of the Holy Spirit that we can even pray at all. So praying is more about expressing who we are than it is in accomplishing what we want. So, and of course, the Lord's Prayer, the first thing it says is, thy will be done. So if you are starting your prayers off by saying, name of Father, Son, and all right, Lord, this is what I need, or this is what I want, yeah, you might be off to the wrong foot. Let's say there's obviously place for petition and the Lord's Prayer is full of petition. But that orientation is a why pray at all is because the Lord has invited us to do it, and by doing it, we become more like Him, and that's ultimately the goal of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't know if you're maybe this summertime. We oftentimes say this, right? That summertime is a great time to maybe take a little refresher in your spiritual life, read a book, maybe make a pilgrimage in this year of hope. Some way to reignite your persistence in being prayerful and in pursuing the life of holiness, maybe.
Right. Yeah, because that's like the beauty of our Christian faith. If we look at religions all throughout history, of course, there's always been this concept of God and other gods, and but all the kind of ancient mythologies that we look at, there was no approaching God in prayer. There was, you make sacrifice to your gods and you hope that you appease them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what the Old Testament story of Abraham is showing, that no, our God is a God who we can approach, who we don't have to be fearful of, who isn't going to smite us because we approach him and ask him for these things, for bringing our needs and our desires to him. But he's also just not going to grant us whatever we want. Mm-hmm. It's a relationship that the Lord desires of us. It's a relationship of encountering him, of recognizing that he is a personal God who loves us. And love isn't always what we exactly want, but it's always what we need at the time.
Yeah. It's not a transaction. I think Father's right on the money there, is that this topic of prayer and praying and being prayerful has a lot more to do with how you are a spouse mm-hmm. or a parent. Mm-hmm. It is the expression of your relationship in love. You don't love your children or love your spouse so that they do what you want or they give you what you want or they behave. No, you love them because you were made for love and you love them. And so loving them is the practice of being who you are rather than trying to accomplish something else. So I think it's great. All right. Well, be loving and be prayerful, and we'll try to do the same here. See you in church.
Peace.